give us short stories, poems, lyric pieces if they want, any form of writing that is small enough to fit on my half-hour time slot. And then we discuss them. And there's a very key distinction there. I want to say discuss, not critique. This is a celebration of your art. As I've said in the past, this show is kind of the... it's a framework, or sorry, it's a frame, and what you give us is the picture for the show. We want to air your pieces and have them heard and have them celebrated.
Yeah, and if you'd like to submit, you can do that at write.onair@gmail.com. That's write.onair@gmail.com. Please submit your work. And if you're brave, and I stress this is a very casual environment, this is a very relaxed environment, and you're in the Chico area, let us know. Come down.
Yep.
Come be in the studio with us, you know.
Come down.
It's always fun when we've got the author here with us.
Yeah, many times we've had pieces that have been on air, and I've gone on this really interesting interpretation and something like that, and then afterwards I have a friend whoever is submitted calls me back and says, yeah, that was really neat, but you were like a mile and a half off the mark. Just want you to know that. And I've gone, well, see, the problem there is you didn't show up. If you had showed up, you could have defended your piece, but you were not here. So, oh well. But if you come here, like Brandon just said, it's very casual, relaxed. We like to hang out, have a good time. We had a Jan Matthews on, I think last week, was it, or the week before that? Or the show before that, I should say.
No, it was last week. It was last show 2 weeks ago.
It's every 2 shows we have a show. So every other Wednesday night we have a show, and that was she's a local poet, and man, she's said it's been a blast on here. Her words, not mine. Yeah. So I guess we're gonna get into our first pieces here. We have 3 tonight. We're gonna look at the first 2 are by a friend of mine, Lillie Alsky. She submitted before. She was our self-touted, I should say, travel abroad person. She was in Japan for a while, so she submitted some pieces from Japan, not in Japanese though. So, anyways.
All right, and the first poem we have here is called Poem Practice. His hands inched and explored from mine chest to neck, crawling his way forward, parted lips, a climactic wreck, and in an icy kiss, death then pulled me into the abyss.
I like that piece a lot too. Climactic kiss. Was that it, or climactic?
Climactic wreck.
Wreck. Man, that is a beautiful, beautiful phrase. The pinnacle of wrecks. Pretty much is what that says. Boy, that could describe love in a nutshell. The pinnacle of wrecks. Let me see that real quick.
Yeah.
We're sharing a document here, so. Poem practice. His hands inched and explored from mine chest to neck. Man, if this is not a love piece, I don't know what is. But it has a really interesting twist at the end there, because it goes from warm and kind of chest to neck to all of a sudden this icy abyss of darkness and death, pretty much. Death then pulled me into the abyss, which could be what it's talking about as well. Talking about death.
Well, the rise and fall of a relationship, maybe. The end of a good relationship might just feel like you're dying.
Yeah, it's crawling up from like inside all the way out, from chest to neck. Like it's going from the inside to very superficial and pulling itself out. Death then pulled me into the abyss. Man, how final is that? That's such a just potent phrase. Ugh, I love small pieces like this because there's so much that you can get out of them, but there's so little being like actually verbally said, but you can pull for hours.
Oh yeah, there's a very famous short poem called The Red Wheelbarrow.
Yep.
I think it's only like a stanza or something like that. It's very short, and there have been just papers and papers written on The Red Wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Parted lips, a climactic wreck, and in an icy kiss, death pulled me into the abyss. 1, that rhyming there is phenomenal. 2, this poem gives me an interesting feeling. I feel cold at the end of it because it becomes such a, I mean, obviously the word is finality. There's an end to it. Death pulled me into the abyss. You've succumbed pretty much, which is another way of talking about love, in my opinion, too. You've succumbed to the finality that it is there and you can't get out of it. It's become part of you, and it has killed that life in you. Maybe not in a good way in this aspect, I would say, because it's definitely has a twist at the end there. But man, isn't that often the case with love, though? It's both good and very bad. Well, thank you, Lily, for that first piece. And I think the second piece we have is going to be by her, too, as well.
Yes. This one is called Sure.
All right.
All right. There's no reason to be negative or pessimistic. Sure. It's been a bad day and somebody was mean to you and your car tire exploded and your favorite latte wasn't available at Starbucks. Sure. Walmart was out of your size and your computer crashed. Sure. It's cold outside and your jacket isn't warm enough and the things you want to do are impossible because you've been at work for hours and studying for finals. Sure. Children are starving and the environment's dying and you aren't guaranteed the quality of life you deserve. Sure, Trump's president, North Korea's people are desperate, and education is nothing more than a business, and every day in America, around 41,000 animals are euthanized. Sure, we don't know how to communicate our feelings. Existentialism eats away at some of us while others are dying in uniforms. We're blinded by colors, and we say it's getting better. We cling to our wealth, and with petty desires, we show only compassion for what we know and those we understand. Sure, television is lulling us into an intellectual slur, and as the clock ticks, you think less for yourself and more for what they want. And sure, we run from what's scary and hard because nobody should be left behind, and someone decided that trying isn't human. And sure, we're depleting our resources and laughing about as we consume and consume and consume. We take from the weaker nations because it's their slave labor that support our existence, but most of us don't even know how to read a map or where countries like Senegal or Cambodia even are in the world. Sure, death is coming sooner and sooner, faster than we're ready for. Sure, we cling to life even so. Sure, I'm just complaining. But there's no reason to be negative or pessimistic. The sun's out and the breeze feels so very precious.
I feel like this could have been a response if someone was like, hey, stop being negative, whatever. And instantly that would have triggered like the, oh my gosh, and that would have just exploded and this would have been the response.
Yes, this is the character breaking down in their kitchen after this cruddy day that's describing at the beginning.
Cruddy life. That's a lot of stuff on that plate. That's not just one day.
Well, no, this is this is your one hell day that you have about once every 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
You came outside, your tire's flat. All right, put the spare on. Drive out, go get your chores done for the day. Starbucks doesn't have my latte. All right, fine.
Yeah, whatever.
Fine.
Just chalk it up.
Right,
it's fine.
Go to Walmart. Okay, the pants I was gonna buy, not there. Okay, it's getting a little bit worse. Go home. My computer's dead. Days just day.
I like how we can hear your fingers tapping.
When it rains, it pours.
Oh yeah, and it just builds up and builds up. This is such a. It's interesting, depending on how you read it, it could be either kind of comical, which I think all comedy is kind of rooted in darkness sometimes.
Comedy is rooted in tragedy.
And this definitely has enough of that in there. 41,000 animals euthanized, all this stuff. But, I mean, it really is, too, a really telling piece, I would say, because there is so much going on. Where do you take a stance? Where do you choose that this is the one thing you're going to care about, the one thing that's going to be there? After a point, the bubble pops and you cannot take it all on. You have to sit there and just go, at least it's nice out today.
Yeah.
You have to find something. That resignation at the end, resignation / I would say optimism. Sure, I'm just complaining, but there's no reason to be negative or pessimistic. The sun's out and the breeze feels so very precious.
No, I see that as like that sarcastic finish. Sure, there's no reason to be pessimistic. The sun's outside. There's a nice breeze. Sure.
Yep. Just give me something else, anything else. Sure, we cling to life even so. It hits a nice shotgun spread of a lot of things that are there. But man, I think that's, for anyone who's aware of what's going on in the world, this is the anxiety that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, we try and keep it all pressed to the outside. We try and focus on our own little bubble. But then every now and again,
it pops.
One thought leads to the other, and it's like, oh, there's problems.
And it's interesting, too, the way she structured this, because it starts out, sure, it's been a bad day and somebody was mean to you, and your car tire exploded. It's very personal. It starts out very intimate, and then it blossoms up to, oh my gosh, there's children starving. Oh my gosh, there's animals dying. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where these countries. And it just kind of spirals out of control, which definitely is an anxiety thing. Like that's, you want to talk about being anxious. That's how it just scales up to everything, and then eventually it just goes to the, I don't know what else to say. Sure, it's nice out. Be done, because you can't keep going. Otherwise, you'll just shut down.
Otherwise, you end up thinking about the heat death of the universe, and there's no hope.
And then at that point, it's all very small and very relative. Very comforting in some sense. Boy, that probably was meant to be a lot darker of a piece, and we just made way too light of that.
No, I think this could be like that comedy, just exasperated break of a character.
I could agree with that, actually, yeah. No, it makes sense. This could be put in, this could be a monologue in a scene of some movie somewhere. Played with like some famous character screaming it out.
Yeah.
Man.
And we have another piece by Anonymous.
By Anonymous, okay.
That we'll get to right now. This piece is Untitled. The war. It was never a time when things were simple. Black and white were non-existent. There were wide shades of color and variation. No man was immune to its influence. Red streaked the face of every man in my group. Our limbs ached, and our swords lay heavily on our laps. Their blades were smeared with blacks, reds, and greens. Cracked was their steel, and broken were the men as their blades. How we could continue on like this, I couldn't even imagine. My captain was a lifeless corpse sitting in the trench, barking orders at the rest of us. Not a soul moved or stirred. None of us had the strength to even lift our blades that felt as if they weighed more than we did. I reached into my coat with a shaky hand and withdrew something small and old. It was a locket. The case was crushed and dented, but I no longer cared about its contents. It was merely a symbol of the days that had once gone by. The world was beyond this battlefield, no longer existed to us. It couldn't. It wouldn't. I dropped the locket on the ground, planted the tip of my blade into the soil at my feet. I placed it there firmly. I placed it there resonantly. I used it to raise myself from the ground. I stayed myself there for a moment, merely trying to find my own balance amongst the soured ground. I stood just beyond the surface. Sorry. I walked away and left it there. The fact that 100 sharpened and stayed blades stood just beyond the surface did not trouble me. The red of my hands did not faze me. I walked on and hoped for the end to a dream I hoped that I never really had and wished to never remember. War, I realized, is never black and white, and no one really wins. It took 1,000 men shrieking red upon my blade for me to realize that, and now I wish that I had never seen the color of the world at all. I walked farther out and spread my arms wide to accept my fate. I could see nothing but black and thought back to the color of the world as I felt my life slip away as I too colored the world.
I get a really big picture of like World War I in the trenches after like you just stand up and kind of give up and you're like, oh man, I'm done. Like there's so much that's been torn and whatnot from the world, and I want my innocence back pretty much. Like I don't want to see the world this way in just reds and in all these horrible colors. I just want to be done, especially after they found a locket of probably that was a personal trinket for someone who'd been a casualty of war, most likely. At least that's what I was getting from this piece. Bit different from the first two, I would say. This is kind of a snapshot of what war looks like from the perspective of a soldier, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely looking at what war is and what war more than what war is romanticized to be a lot of times. You know, You see these documentaries, you read the war stories, and it's always written in a way that makes it seem heroic, makes it seem uh, amazing and sort of dutiful
Full of
and
glory.
honor. Yes.
Yeah. I like, too, the distinction that's made there. It's not just black and white. It's not good and bad. I think propaganda makes it that way from a lot of the perspective of people who are in countries not fighting the war, see it as black and white. But then you actually get there, and it's just a very jumbled mess, and it's hard to tell who the good guys are and hard to tell who the bad guys are. And there's situations where the bad guys might even be the good guys on some occasions, depending on which country you're in. It's so jumbled up. It's so convoluted all the time. War is not something that is black and white. It's many different shades and many different perspectives.
Yeah, who the good guy is entirely depends on what side you're fighting on.
Yeah, entirely. There was one part that I liked in there too. I mean, the character says it. War, I realized, is never black and white, and no one really wins. It took over 1,000 men streaking red upon my blade for me to realize that, and now I wish I'd never seen the color of the world at all. I wish I had never known this. I wish I had been able to stay in my happy black and white perspective, because that at least you can validate yourself being right. But imagine being in a position where you can't. You now know you cannot be in the right because you're probably not. There's just too many factors and too many variations. The things you've done are now have stained you in pretty terrible ways.
Yeah, it really comes down to a point where we always think of right and wrong as having this really hard to find line.
Yeah.
Step a millimeter over it, step a centimeter over it, and you're in the wrong. But that line's pretty blurry in most situations.
Yeah.
Especially in war. The line almost doesn't exist.
Yep. I like the end of this too, 'cause it's very, I won't say hidden, but it's kind of toned down of what's happened in the end there. I walked further out. Let me grab this again. I walked farther out and spread my arms wide to accept my fate. I could see nothing but black and thought back to the color of the world as I felt my life slip away as I too colored the world. This is where I get the image of a World War I trench fields, where you've stood up out of the trenches. The sky is black because there's bombardment and smoldering fires everywhere, and you've given up and you're being shot at now by the enemy because they see someone standing up and you're the only target out there. And this is what's happening to this man from my perspective. He's hit this point where he's like, well, I can't handle this anymore, and he stood up above the trenches or above whatever barricade he's behind and walked forward, and that's the end of it.
Yeah,
he's become another casualty of war. Just couldn't cope with it. Not saying that that's a bad thing or good thing. He just couldn't.
Yeah.
It's just it. It's a very neutral thing. Man, such a brilliant pieces tonight. Definitely, I would say all across the board for the pieces tonight. We've hit one on war. One on love, which I mean could be its own war in some sense.
Are you trying to make one of your wild connections?
No. Now it's just an observation. Brandon always has. I'm just not always. There's been times where I have made some pretty interesting connections. I'll say as I look whimsically off in the distance. That sometimes are I won't say far flung and far fetched, but sometimes I take in a little bit too much than I can handle. But I would say they've worked off like 90% of the times. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of looking back at what we've had for this evening. We've had a love piece, I would say, pretty confidently. That first one felt like a love piece or a death piece too. You could probably spin it either way. And then we had a piece of just exasperation. Just I can't deal with this. Sure, everything's fine. Whatever. That one, and then we had a piece on war, which I mean I guess all have their similar threads in looking at different aspects of life here and there. But yeah, no, these ones definitely hit very different things. I don't know. That's all there is to say about that. Bye. Walk away.
No. They really do all kind of hit different spots. The first one being this really short, very intense piece that tries to pack a lot of emotion into, I think it was only like 6 or 7 lines.
Yeah, very short.
Very, very, very short. That has that brilliant quality of every well-written short poem, that it goes everywhere to the reader. It can, that could be a love piece.
Yeah,
That
could be a death piece.
That could be a death piece. That could be...
Or both.
it could technically be a piece about just the journey of life. And we get this really kind of human piece from the second piece, Sure, which I think everyone, any adult human being can relate to. Of there will be a bad day, there will be a day of reckoning
where it's just
that we
too
will
much.
all have. That it's not the straw that broke the camel's back; it's the 14 straws that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. And then we have this last piece. I mean, all these pieces, I think, speak to a different perspective on part of your human condition. We see this love/death relationship that's going on there because it feels like a very similar emotion, I would say. Given the time and what's going on in the situation, it could be like that. And then we hit this exasperation, just, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to deal with this. Sure, everything's great. Sure, why not?
I'm going to go outside in the sunshine, just lay in the grass, enjoy the breeze, and you can talk to me tomorrow.
Yep, pretty much.
Sure.
Puts the hand up.
Let's go.
And then we hit this last piece, which is, I would say, not necessarily what a lay person would confront on a day-to-day basis, but you could scale it back and say, you know, this is a piece on innocence, on losing innocence. I think you could make a good generalization on that, and wanting that back, which does scale, I would say, into a civilian quote-unquote lifestyle. You've lost something that you want back, which could even scale into that second piece, Sure, where, there's just so many things going on. I see all these things. I'm no longer innocent and oblivious to the world. I understand what's going on, and it is just messed up. I don't know what else to say this, but I guess I'll try to find some positivity there. And the first one, which is the love one, just saying, man, this is completely gripped my entire being and is now killing me because it's so overwhelming. It's so incredibly potent. So, I mean, if I want to make a connection there, I would just say these are different perspectives on different parts of the human condition. There's my overarching weaving aspect I have there, as Brandon laughs heartily. Yeah. Well, I guess segueing away from these, I was looking at how many shows we've had. This is now the second show that I've done over a year. So I apparently missed my christening year of show after 52 weeks or whatever that is. But thank you for everyone who's submitted, even up until this point, because this has been, a journey. This has been an incredible experience. And I mean, to get pieces like this from people who are submitting anonymously, which is honestly kind of exciting for me, because then I don't know who this is. There's no way I can even, in some unconscious way, impress a bias on it. It's just, it is what it is. It's a completely anonymous thing. And then people who I do know, who are close friends, who support the show and say, hey, I have some pieces, let me kick them over to you. They're all extremely fantastic experiences that I'm able to have. And even having artists come on the show like Rob Davidson and Jan Matthews, people who have self-published, this has been quite a journey. Thanks everyone who's able to contribute to this and give me pieces that we can read, because it's just fantastic.
Yeah, thank you all to anyone that's ever submitted to this show, and anyone that plans to submit, and especially thank you to anyone out there that's listening, because this show is really about exposing people to other people's art. Yep. And these are, for most of these people, they aren't published.
Yep.
They aren't out there. And this gives them an audience. And for the most part, writing is about having it heard, having it read. And while a lot of people will write for themselves, even they will admit that deep down they wish that someone would read it and give them some kind of feedback. And this show, and thanks to KZFR, has been a wonderful place for those people to do that. So thank you to the listeners as well.
Yeah, seriously. Man, I wish we could keep going into this. This is one of those time slots where it's sometimes you have to walk a fine line of what you want to cut down and trim on the conversations, because it's so squished in. 3 is kind of the most we can get in there. But I guess just to reiterate one more time, we had the first 2 pieces, which were by Lillie Alsky. We had Poem Practice, I think, was the first one.
Poem Practice and Sure.
Poem Practice and Sure. And then that was a love/death poem / gripping and enticing story in just a few short lines, which poetry is one of my favorite forms of writing, because you can either make it long and lengthy, or you can consolidate it down into just one little drop, and you can get the same amount of material out of either route that you go, which is a really beautiful, beautiful style. And then we had another one, which was, I would say, more of a monologue.
Yeah.
almost kind of just as we were saying, could be put in a movie somewhere.
A movie, a TV show, in the
play.
middle of a story. Yeah, it
That
could
would
fit
be-
in a lot of places.
That would be really fun, actually, to try and do that. And then we had this last piece obviously on war, considering the first sentence is the war, and then it moves on from there. If it's not on war, I urge this author to come on here and please correct me in all my horrible perception on what this is about. But yeah, all these pieces wildly different tonight, but very, very good. Very, very good. Well, I would say if anyone wants to submit again, you can do so to me at write.onair@gmail.com.
That is WRITE.onair@gmail.com.
Yeah, and you can contact me through Facebook as well. And let's see, Facebook, what else have we got going for us? We don't have Instagram, probably not going to get that. Sorry if anyone wants it or whatever. We have my email, Facebook. I feel like I'm missing something.
The YouTube channel where we
YouTube
upload
channel.
these.
That's probably the biggest one I should mention. Yes, all these will be put on YouTube pretty quickly after the fact. So
And they also should hopefully all be archived on KZFR's
Yes.
website, kzfr.org.
and you can find it there first, I would say, because the YouTube one usually takes a day or two for me to process and edit and get it on there. But yeah, write.onair@gmail.com, Facebook, and YouTube for sure. So thanks everyone for having a good night, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And Right On Air is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Harrison Daly Wright Accounting Corporation in Chico. Harrison Daly Wright and provides certified public accountants specializing in accounting and bookkeeping services, auditing, tax prep and planning, management support, services for nonprofit organizations, and more. To reach Harrison Daly Wright, call 895-1209. Well, have a good night, everyone.